So today we'd like to take a look at some of the challenges we face when we're looking at diesel particulate filters that come into the workshop. Now, when we look at the diesel particulate filter, what we have to think about is that the filter is just a filter in the exhaust system. What we have to look at is why the filter is not going into regeneration. And what it's actually about is diagnosing the problem, not the filter. So we're just going to take a look at some of the things that can actually prevent regeneration from taking place. So driving styles is a major factor to whether a DPF is going to regenerate out on the road or not. Now, we need to be above a certain speed for a certain amount of time for active regeneration to take place on the road. And what we have is a window of opportunity. So at around about 40 to 45% soot loading, the management system will start calling for regeneration to take place. This really is a window of opportunity up to 70 to 80% soot loading. At this point, we actually stop the regeneration process because of thermal incidents taking place. So we have a set amount of time where we can actually regenerate the diesel particulate filter on the road. And it's our driving conditions and our driving styles which will determine whether that takes place on the road. Whenever we bring a vehicle into the workshop with a DPF problem, then we have to look at the things that are taking place to stop regeneration happening during the normal drive cycle. What we must do first is actually validate the DPF pressure sensor. Now, if we have a problem with the DPF pressure sensor, this could be reading that there's too much pressure in the DPF when there isn't, and constantly trying to go into regeneration on the road. If the vehicle's trying to do this, this can actually lead to oil dilution. So it's really important that we validate the correct values of the DPF pressure sensor whenever we're working on a diesel particulate filter system. The other thing that's really important when that vehicle comes into the workshop is that we have the correct amount of fuel in the system. Now, we need more than 1/4 of a tank of fuel. Under this level, when we take the vehicle out for a regenerative drive, regeneration won't take place if we've got less than 1/4 of a tank of fuel in the fuel tank. So it's really important that we encourage the customer when they bring the vehicle in for a fault with the DPF system that they've put fuel in the system before we actually have a look at it. The other major factors that take place are exhaust gas temperatures. Now, for a regeneration to take place, we need to raise the exhaust gas temperature to burn the soot through the diesel particulate filter. Anything that affects our combustion process and lowers our exhaust gas temperatures, such as a contaminated injector or an air leak in the system, these will all affect our exhaust gas temperatures, and with them too low, we can't ignite the fuel for regeneration to take place. The other areas where we need to look are, as we start building up the soot loading in the diesel particulate filter, this can actually have an effect on other components in the system. That back pressure, as we're building it up, can actually start to affect and contaminate our variable geometry turbo. So the vanes will start sticking and cause us a problem with turbo response. We can also see an increase in inlet manifold contamination. And as we start to build up the contamination in the manifold, this will restrict the airflow coming into the system and in turn affect the combustion process, which then will reduce the effects of regeneration taking place in the system. So another component that's really important that it's operating correctly is the exhaust gas recirculation valve. Now, this particular valve builds up contamination behind the valve, and when it opens and then closes again, it traps that contamination between the valve so it can't close properly. An EGR valve that can't close properly will actually prevent regeneration from taking place when we're driving on the road. The result of that is that we end up with a vehicle in the workshop with a blocked diesel particulate filter. The other elements to this is things like the fuel cap. There is a magnet in some fuel caps which operates a switch on the fuel filler neck. So if the customer has left this on top of the fuel pump and they've replaced it with a temporary plastic cap, not seeing that fuel cap there on the system will actually prevent regeneration from happening on the road. The other elements to look at are things like sensors, so oxygen sensors, coolant temperature sensors. Any failure of these sensors where it's not getting the correct read into the engine management system will also prevent regeneration. Some vehicles operate an oil counter system. So when it comes down to the lowest level where it's saying that it actually needs an oil and filter change to take place, If the oil counter hasn't been reset as part of the service or it's come to the end of its counting, then again, this will prevent regeneration from taking place. With the systems that use alloys in the additive tank, then if we've got any issues with low additive or the system isn't working effectively, again, we're not going to regenerate that diesel particulate filter out on the road. So when we look at these areas, it's about maintaining the oil and the fuel system cleanliness levels to make sure that we've got good clean combustion taking place. But there are just a couple of other little things that can catch us out. Dirty intercoolers. If the outside of the intercooler is dirty and we haven't got that airflow through the intercooler, this can actually raise the air intake temperature. With the air intake temperature too high, again, this can stop the regeneration process. Load components not working. So when we go into regeneration on the road, the system will sometimes load up the vehicle by switching on the rear heated window or a front heated screen or the air conditioning. If any of these components are not working, maybe because of a blown fuse or a wiring fault, again, regeneration won't take place out on the road. It's always important to remember as well, when we're driving the vehicle on the road for regeneration to take place, keep the windows closed. This is another area where we can drive the vehicle, and some vehicles, if they've got the driver's window open, will not actually go into active regeneration because of the risk of fumes. So when we bring that vehicle into the workshop, what can we do with that vehicle when it comes in? We know we've got the end result of a blocked diesel particulate filter or a vehicle that won't go into regeneration. And these are the areas that we need to look at. We need to diagnose the problem, not the filter. So we need to use some tools to actually take us through a process to do an informed diagnosis of the vehicle so we can work out why regeneration is not taking place. We have two items that can be used in the workshop. We have the DPF or diesel particulate filter check pad and the diesel particulate filter flowchart. Now, when we come to use the check pad, one of the most important things is that we actually spend a little bit of time talking to the customer, finding out their driving styles, finding out their driving habits. And this in turn can lead us down a route to make a decision of whether it is actually the driving styles and conditions that are preventing regeneration taking place. When we've done that, we can then do some visual checks of the vehicle. So we are looking at the oil level. Any signs of oil dilution or excess oil in the system, we must challenge that first. And we must flush the engine and carry out an oil and filter change before we make any attempts at regenerating the diesel particulate filter. We need to check for air leaks and check the fuel cap, make sure that's present. We need to check the fuel amount in the tank. Once we've done our visual checks, then we can have a look at our diagnostic checks. So we can look for fault codes in the engine management system, which should lead us to a route if we have a faulty sensor or a problem with the EGR valve. Once we've gathered all of this information, then we can make a decision of how we're actually going to treat the vehicle to rectify the problem. So we have three solutions. Our first solution is DPF cleaner and regenerator and diesel specialist injector cleaner added to the fuel tank. These will clean up the fuel system, restore the operation and clean the injectors, and with the DPF cleaner and regenerator, this will actually help regeneration to take place on the road by lowering the soot burn temperature in the diesel particulate filter. If the soot loading of the DPF is actually too high and it's above that 70% threshold, then we may need to look at actually removing the DPF and using a DPF off-car cleaner. So we manually clean the diesel particulate filter in the reverse direction of the exhaust flow with our spray product. We spray this directly into the diesel particulate filter to remove the soot and the ash from the DPF. Once we've cleared out the DPF, we can refit it to the vehicle, but we must always look at why regeneration is not taking place. Our latest solution for DPF is with the new Power Clean machine. So this machine actually allows us to clean the diesel particulate filter on car. So we have a two-product process where we add a DPF cleaner via the machine directly to the DPF, and then we follow it up with the DPF flush to rinse everything through the system. Once they've been applied through the machine, then we take the vehicle out on a road test and give it a good run to clear the system through. Again, It is really, really important that we actually look at why that diesel particulate filter is blocked and why regeneration isn't taking place. So we must always remember to diagnose the problem, not the filter.